Hey there, Jeremy Weiss here with Weiss Tech Hockey, and in this video we're going to outline 5 key steps to plan fun, effective practices that will improve development and win more games. Exciting stuff. Let's go ahead and jump straight in. First and foremost, you got to have a plan. Now that might seem kind of basic, it might seem kind of a no-brainer, but you'd be surprised at how many coaches show up to the rink and wing it. Practice in, practice out. Have a plan. Have a written plan. Think about your practice beforehand. All these things should go into it. I have found that computerized practice planners work really well for this kind of thing. So if you're interested, check out HockeyShare or DrillDraw. Those are the two that I recommend. I'll put links down below this video to some of these things that I talk about, so that if you want to check it out on your own, you can. But it doesn't have to be computerized. You can hand draw the practices. I mean, that's what I was doing for years before these computerized drill diagrammers came around. And I will also include actually a couple of downloads for some practice plan printouts, just blank sheets that you can hand draw them like we used to do in the old days. But first and foremost, have a plan. I think that's pretty self-explanatory, but we'll come back to this as we go throughout the rest of the 5 tips. Key number 2 is thinking in terms of development sequences. That means as you're planning your practice, you're not just pulling drills out of a hat and saying, oh, this one looks fun, oh, this one looks interesting. Think about what you're trying to accomplish and what each drill accomplishes, each drill that you select. What does this drill do? What should this drill look like? There are development sequences in hockey. Generally speaking, there are 3 main development sequences, and then you can probably break each of those down into smaller pieces. But for the sake of this discussion, first and foremost, there's acquisition, or acquiring new skills. This is done by really breaking the skill down into small pieces, executing it slowly, precisely, with intention. So if you're talking forward stride, for example, we want to make sure that kids have a proper knee bend, that they're pushing off the proper angle, that they're getting a full extension on their stride, that they're recoiling properly between each stride, that their upper body is in sync with their lower body. These are all parts of the acquisition of the forward stride. Now, once the kids acquire the skill, then they can move into what I call the development phase. Okay, so acquisition is first, then development. In the development phase, we're working on that same skill, but we're adding new elements. So we're doing it at speed, or we're doing it in combination with another skill. So maybe we're talking about the forward stride with a puck on the stick. So now there's 2 skills at play. There's the forward stride, and we need to make sure that as we're developing, that we're still maintaining those fundamental parts of the forward stride. So just because we put a puck on your stick doesn't mean, a lot of times with the players, as they put a puck on their stick, their stride might look really, really nice, and then you put a puck on their stick and all of a sudden their stride falls apart because now they're worrying about 2 things. This is more applicable generally at the younger age groups, the less experienced players. So, adding additional elements to skills, combining skills, doing the skills at speed, adding some token pressure. These are all ways of developing the skill that you've already worked on in the acquisition phase. And lastly, we have the application. That's the 3rd development sequence. Application. This is where we're doing the drill at speed with game-like speed, game-like pressure, and obviously, game-like situation. So, small area games are really good for the application phase. So we may have worked on our forward stride, and then we worked on our forward stride with the puck. Now we're going to apply this in a game-like situation where the kid has to do forward stride with the puck, with somebody putting pressure on them. Maybe you put it into like a game-like pattern, like a breakout type pattern. So defenseman has to go into the corner, pick up a puck with a forechecker on him or her, execute a breakout, and come out. That could be an application type drill. So each drill will work on specific phases of the these development sequences. And it's really important that as you're planning your practice, that you're considering, what is it that I'm trying to accomplish? What is it that my players need right now? And you might go back to your most recent game and say, okay, we were having a really hard time breaking out. Why is that? Is it a physical skill problem? Is it a mental problem? Is it understanding? Is it a read and react problem? Do they not understand where to be? Do they not understand what the read is? Are they making an improper read? Well, depending on why the breakout isn't happening, there may be a different course of action. There will be a different course of action for how you address that and work on it in practice. If it's a physical skill problem, our kids just aren't good enough puck handlers or passers to execute that breakout. Well, then you got to go right back to the acquisition phase and make sure that they understand how to give and receive a proper pass, how to stick handle properly, and really work on those individual skills. If it's a read and react type problem, that's probably more along the lines of application. They can skate, they can puck handle, they can make a pass, but at speed, under pressure, they're not capable of making the proper decision. So that's where we use an application type drill. So as you're planning your practices, be thinking in terms of development sequences. Key number 3 goes right hand in hand with development sequences, but it's a little bit different. Progressions. Progressions are an underutilized secret in hockey development. So we talk about development sequences, and that's a form of a progression. Acquire the skill first, develop it, then apply it. Progressions are it's broader than that. So you've got your short-term development and your long-term development. Your short-term progressions and your long-term progressions. So an example of a short-term progression would be, breaking down your objectives within a single season. And then you can get even shorter within that. So you might say, by the end of the season, we want to be able to execute a good breakout. We want to have a board side breakout and a middle breakout. We also want to have 2 forechecking systems that we can execute perfectly. We want to be able to do a regroup in the neutral zone so we don't have to just slap the puck in. And we want to have, I probably should have said this earlier, we want to have a good defensive zone coverage setup. Just one. If we can get through that, if we can get that accomplished by the end of the season, we will have achieved our objectives. Okay, so that's your season goal. That's your season objective. Now, how's that going to happen? Well, we've got to start somewhere. Okay, so we're going to start. I would probably recommend starting with defensive zone coverage. Make sure that's nailed down first. Then branch out into breakout, and then go through into your offensive stuff and neutral zone play. And you're going to break that down into bite-sized pieces, stuff that you can work on, and then progress that through the season. You can use there's progressions within progressions as well. We kind of talked about that earlier. But what needs to happen in order for a team to execute a breakout? We keep going back to that example. Let's just stay with it. What things need to be in place for a team to be able to execute a breakout? Well, there's the physical skills. The players have to be able to skate, control the puck. They have to be able to, misdirect without losing control of the puck. They have to be able to give and receive passes. That's probably about it as far as physical skills. They have to be able to read and react. They have to be able to read the play, read where the pressure is, and react to it. They have to be able to do that under pressure. So there's a series of progressions that will need to be developed in order to progress a team from not being able to do a breakout to being able to do a breakout. Okay? So you got your short-term progressions, you got progressions within progressions, and you've got long-term progressions as well. So you might look at it and you say, we're starting with mites. For mites, our main objective is to get the kids to stop playing dump and chase and to have a little bit of some structured play. We can do a basic breakout. We can do a basic offensive attack where one player drives wide and then does a middle pass to the guy across in front of the net for a shot on goal. And if we can accomplish that, then great. So when the kids are 8 years old, I hope to be able to do this. But 5 years down the road, I expect the kids to be able to do this, and this. So what do we need to accomplish this year in order to be able to be where we want to be by the end of the 5th year? And that's a problem, or that's a concept that sometimes gives coaches a problem because it requires continuity. Continuity is one of the most underrated, underestimated benefits and bonuses that you can provide your kids for their development. I've often said I'd rather have an average coach that's with the same group of kids for 5 years than to have a different NHL caliber coach with the kids every single year. Because I believe that you can get, as long as that coach has a minimum level of competency, as long as he or she can understand the basics, it's going to be better for those kids to have that continuity from year to year. And they will be able to pick up each year where they left off. And the same thing goes with the team. It's not just about having the same coach, but being able to keep the core group of kids together for multiple seasons is a huge benefit. And that way, the coach can have in his or her mind the game plan of, where are we taking this group of kids over the next 5 years? And, it will be able to be accomplished because of that continuity from year to year. It's not like hitting the reset button every single summer, which is what happens when you don't have that continuity. You spend the first half of the year. If you hit the reset button, meaning having a new coach or having a new set of players, you hit that reset button every summer. And you spend the first half of the year getting used to the new coach's methodologies and terminologies and everything else. Whereas if you can keep the same group of kids and the same coach together, it's like, okay, well, we ended the season here. We pick up here. We do a quick review of the first 2 weeks of the season, and now we're right back in the saddle with our progress. And the kids can pick it up a lot quicker. So think in terms of progressions. And those progressions you need to have, a short-term plan, which is your year plan, and then you need to break that down into segments of the year. So, we hope to be here by the halfway point, and then break that down into, progressions from drill to drill, from practice to practice, and from year to year, and then over the course of multiple years. So think in terms of progressions, and then as you're doing that, also think in terms of those development sequences that we mentioned in key number 2. Key number 4, limit your WHIP. Now you might be wondering, what the heck does that mean? Limit your WHIP. Limiting your WHIP means limiting your work in progress. And this actually comes from something I'm probably going to expound upon a little bit later in another course or another video or something. But I've been studying it quite a bit lately. And it comes from a philosophy of doing business, or project management, I should say, called Scrum. You may or may not have heard of that. If you haven't heard of it, look it up. It's pretty interesting, and it's a concept that I feel really applies in hockey, especially this concept of limiting your WHIP. So to illustrate this, I wanted to give a little example that I actually read in one of these books that I've been studying. And the author had a dog. I think the dog's name was Coco. And the author was home alone one day with his buddy. He was about 13 years old. And he had a box of cereal that he was eating. They were playing video games and eating dry cereal. And of course, the dog always wanted in on whatever food that they were eating. So, the author at the time tossed a piece of cereal up in the air, and the dog caught it in his mouth. He thought that was pretty amusing, so he did it again. Tossed it a little bit higher. Dog caught it in his mouth. Then he stood up and wound up like he was going to pitch a baseball. And, obviously you don't get a lot of velocity on a piece of cereal. So he chucked this piece of cereal as hard as he could at the dog's mouth. And the dog caught it. So then he's thinking this is pretty interesting. He grabs 2 pieces of cereal, right? 2 pieces of cereal, throws them up in the air. Sure enough, the dog caught both of them. He says, I wonder if he could catch 3. So he takes 3 pieces of cereal, throws them up in the air, and the dog caught all 3. So now he's pretty intrigued. He grabs a handful of cereal, throws the handful up in the air, and the dog caught nothing. And he thought that was a pretty interesting concept. And he was amused by it. He was 13 years old. He was amused by it, but he wanted to try it again. So he threw one. Dog caught it. Threw two. Dog caught it. Threw three. The dog caught it. Threw four. The dog caught nothing. So the dog had a work in progress limit of 3. And he tried it again and again and again, and it was always 3. As soon as it got above 3, the dog couldn't catch any of them. So how does this apply in our hockey skills? How does this apply in hockey development and practice planning? Well, it's the exact same concept. You work on one skill in practice, the kid will improve. It may not become perfect in one practice, but you'll see visible improvement. You work on 2 skills, you may see improvement. And I think every player is going to be a little bit different individually. But as a team, you'll see improvement. Work on 3 skills, you may see improvement. But if you start getting into a huge, like you're going to work on, 6 or 7 different elements of the game over a practice, you probably won't see visible improvement in any of those. So, what do I recommend? I recommend at the beginning of the season, give your kids a really good overview of everything you're going to be working on. Let them get a taste, or at least hear it from your mouth, see it on the chalkboard or the whiteboard of everything you're going to do. Give them a defensive zone coverage overview. Give them a breakout overview. Teach them what you're going to expect in the neutral zone and the offensive attack. Teach them your regroups. Teach them your special teams. But then when it comes to actually working on it, you're going to pick 2, maybe 3 concepts, 2, maybe 3 individual skills, and that's going to be your focus. That's all you're going to focus on at once, at the same time. So in your practice, you may focus on your skating and your puck handling in any given practice. And then you're going to be working on your, let's just say, your defensive zone coverage and your breakouts. And that's it. For the time being, you're going to let the other things kind of take care of themselves. And you're not really going to move on and branch out until you're proficient in those certain skills that you decided were the most important for your team at the time. And that's really how it goes. You're going to triage your team. You're going to say, what is the most important thing we need to be working on now? And that is going to be your work in progress. As soon as you start adding too many things, the kids aren't going to be capable of absorbing it all. They're not going to be capable of developing it all to the point of proficiency. And you're going to be spinning your wheels, working really, really hard and getting nothing done. So, limit your whip and you will see visible, tangible improvements. You will see it quicker, you will see it more profoundly, and you'll be able to branch out into additional concepts more quickly than you otherwise would be. Key number 5 is the 3 R's. The 3 R's is revisit, reinforce, and reevaluate. Now again, this is where, I recommend having that written practice plan and take notes on it. How did this drill go? How did that drill go? Where were we weak? Where were we strong? And then save those practice plans. Now, if you've got, for example, my wife, this drove her crazy. When I was doing this all by paper, it drove her crazy. And I know it drove my mom crazy because my dad would do the same thing. He would save all his practice plans. I would save all my practice plans. I wouldn't just save them and never see them again. I would save them and take a look at them. I'd go back and say, what did we work on? How did it go? What do we need to revisit now that we touched on at the beginning of the season? Again, this is where computerized practice planning really helps because, now this isn't a binder full of practice plans. This is all on your hard drive. And so you can go back and, take a look at what you've done in the past, reread your notes. But you need to go back and revisit skills and drills and concepts that you hit on. I usually like to go 2 weeks forward and then, or 3 weeks forward, then back up 2 weeks and then go forward from there. 3 weeks forward, back up 2 weeks, 3 weeks forward, back up 2 weeks, and continually be developing, improving, but then revisiting and reinforcing the drills and skills and concepts that you already hit on in the past. So revisit your practice plans, reinforce the skills that you have already been working on, and then reevaluate. Have we made improvement? Have we retained the improvement that we made previously? Do we need to revisit this again? Do we need to re-explain anything? How is this skill, this concept going for us? So it's always, you're doing like a feedback loop with yourself, with your team, with your players. So, 3 weeks worth of practice plans, bounce back 2 weeks, check out where you were, check out what you did, revisit some of those drills, reinforce the skills, reevaluate how your progress is looking. Those are the 3 R's. Very, very important though to make sure you hit those. Last but definitely not least, I figured I'd throw in a quick bonus tip. And this is one that, if I'm going to be totally honest with you, I was a bit skeptical, when you first start seeing these different gadgets and training aids and stuff on the ice. I'm looking at that going, let's just use cones. We don't need to get crazy here. But I have found that when you bring something creative out on the ice, the kids get excited about it. They want to try it. They want to try putting the puck through, for example, the attack triangle type things. There's a lot of stuff. You can go crazy. You can spend a lot of money on this, or you can do it on the cheap. It's really easy to do stuff like this on the cheap. We have a coach in our organization that made a bunch of his own obstacles. And so he brings them out on the ice from time to time. And it's a blast. You get these little obstacle courses going and different things like that where the kids can go through. And I find myself wanting to jump in on the drills with the kids. And I do. I get in there and I do. We'll set up a tire and we'll flip a puck through the tire, catch it on the other side. We've got a lot of different stuff that we use. Get creative. It doesn't have to cost a lot of money though. If your rink has those mini nets, those can be awesome obstacles as well. Tip over a mini net, put a couple pucks under the crossbar, and now you've got an obstacle that you can stick handle around or stick handle through. You can toe drag through it or around it. A lot of different ways of utilizing various obstacles on the ice, but they definitely do, and I'll swear by this, they make the practice more exciting, more interesting for the kids. So as you're going through, especially in the acquisition phase, sometimes those drills can become tedious and boring and tiring for the kids. Maybe not physically, but mentally. And so, do an acquisition drill, but then follow it up with something using some sort of creative training aid, and it will bring that excitement back in. The kids will be, excited to try it and motivated, and I feel like it's a lot of fun. So take that for what it's worth. It is a lot of fun. Like I said, you can spend quite a bit of money on this. You don't have to. That's, completely a personal decision there. But the end result is definitely one that I stand by. And that is that the practice is more motivating, more fun, and more memorable for the kids. So that's that. Hopefully that helps you with your practice plans. Feel free to email me any feedback on this that you have. You can email me at info@weisstechhockey.com. Thanks, and we'll be in touch soon.